Hollywood has always sold us the dream of glamorous stars, living perfect lives and getting along like one big happy family. But behind the golden curtains and million-dollar smiles lies a different reality, a reality filled with bitter rivalries, and professional jealousies and personal conflicts that lasted decades. James Garner was one of the most charming and beloved actors in Hollywood history. His easygoing smile and natural charisma made him a star on television in Maverick and The Rockford Files and in countless memorable films. Audiences adored him. Critics praised him. But behind that affable persona was a man who did not suffer fools and did not fake friendships for the sake of publicity. James Garner knew exactly who he liked and, more importantly, who he could not stand. He was honest to a fault, and when he had a problem with someone, he did not hide it behind fake Hollywood pleasantries. As Garner himself once said about the industry, he spent his life in there are people who deserve respect and people who deserve honesty, and sometimes honesty means admitting you cannot stand someone. Throughout his legendary career spanning over 5 decades, Garner clashed with some of the biggest names in the business. These were not minor disagreements or petty squabbles. These were deep-seated conflicts rooted in fundamental differences about professionalism and integrity and what it meant to be a real actor versus a Hollywood phony. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the 6 actors James Garner genuinely hated. These stories reveal the man behind the charm and show us that even the nicest guys in Hollywood have their limits. Number 1. Charlton Heston. Animosity between James Garner and Charlton Heston was legendary in Hollywood circles, and it started early in both of their careers. On the surface, they seemed like they came from different planets in the acting universe. Heston was known for his larger-than-life performances in epic films like The 10 Commandments and Ben-Hur. He carried himself with an air of self-importance that matched the biblical and historical figures he portrayed on screen. Garner, on the other hand, built his career on naturalistic performances, an understated charm, and a refusal to take himself too seriously. Their first significant clash happened during a Screen Actors Guild meeting in the early 1960s. Garner was becoming increasingly involved in union politics and fighting for better pay and working conditions for actors, especially those working in television, who were often treated as second-class citizens compared to film stars. Heston, who was already positioning himself as Hollywood royalty, dismissed many of Garner's concerns as trivial. According to people who were present at these meetings, Heston would speak in grand pronouncements as if he were Moses delivering commandments, rather than an actor discussing contract terms. Garner found this behavior insufferable and pretentious. He believed that actors were workers who deserved fair treatment, not kings who should be grateful for whatever studios decided to give them. The conflict became more personal when Heston made comments in interviews suggesting that television actors were not real actors and that the medium was beneath serious performers. Garner, who had achieved stardom through Maverick, took this as a direct insult. He fired back in his own interviews, saying that some film actors confused playing dress-up in costumes with actual acting ability. The jabs were clear even if he did not mention Heston by name. Everyone in Hollywood knew exactly who he was talking about. Their mutual dislike intensified over the years as they found themselves on opposite sides of nearly every industry debate. Heston became increasingly conservative and used his fame to promote political causes that Garner found distasteful. Garner was more liberal and believed that actors should focus on their craft rather than pretending to be political experts. As Garner said in his autobiography, Heston confused playing heroes with actually being one, and that kind of self-delusion made him impossible to respect. They avoided working together throughout their entire careers, which, given how long both men worked, is actually quite remarkable. When Heston passed away, Garner remained silent while other stars rushed to praise him. That silence spoke volumes about a hatred that time never softened. Number 2. Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen was the king of cool in Hollywood during the 1960s and 1970s, but James Garner saw through the carefully crafted image to the insecure and difficult man underneath. Their hatred for each other was rooted in both professional competition and personal contempt. Both men were leading action stars, and both were known for doing their own stunts, and both had that masculine everyman quality that audiences loved. But that is where the similarities ended. Garner was a professional who showed up prepared and treated crew members with respect and did his job without drama. McQueen was notorious for his on-set behavior, including showing up late and demanding special treatment and making impossible demands that made productions more difficult and expensive. Their most direct conflict came during The Great Escape, where both had significant roles. McQueen constantly tried to upstage other actors and demanded script changes that would give him more screen time and more heroic moments. Garner watched this behavior with growing disgust. He believed that acting was a collaborative art form, and that McQueen's ego-driven antics disrespected everyone else involved in the production. There was one particular incident during filming where McQueen insisted on doing a motorcycle stunt that was not even in the original script. The production had to stop for days while this sequence was planned and shot, all because McQueen wanted a cool moment for himself. Garner was furious about the delay and the cost and what he saw as unprofessional selfishness. He confronted McQueen about it, and their argument was so heated that crew members had to separate them. From that point forward, they barely spoke to each other except when scenes required it. After The Great Escape, they never worked together again, despite both being top action stars for many years when such a pairing would have made financial sense. Garner later said that McQueen was the most insecure actor he ever met and that all the cool posturing was covering up deep inadequacy. He also noted that McQueen treated people badly based on their position and power, which Garner considered the mark of a small person. McQueen reportedly returned the animosity, calling Garner a television actor who got lucky in films. This insult was particularly stupid considering Garner's successful film career, but it revealed McQueen's need to put others down to build himself up. The great director John Sturges, who worked with both men, said that Garner was the better actor, but McQueen had better marketing. That assessment probably would have pleased Garner, who never confused fame with talent. Their mutual hatred remained until McQueen's early death, and Garner never softened his opinion even after McQueen could not defend himself anymore. Number 3. Charles Bronson. The conflict between James Garner and Charles Bronson is fascinating because both men projected tough guy personas, but for completely different reasons and in completely different ways. Bronson built his career on playing stone-faced violent characters who barely spoke and solved problems with guns and fists. Garner played tough when needed, but always with intelligence and humor and humanity. Their personal relationship was poisoned by an incident that happened early in both of their careers, and it never recovered. They worked together on a Western television episode in the late 1950s when both were still climbing the ladder towards stardom. According to Garner's recollection, Bronson was unnecessarily rough during a fight scene and actually hurt him during a stunt. Garner believed it was intentional and meant to make Bronson look tougher and more authentic at Garner's expense. When Garner confronted him about it, Bronson showed no remorse and basically told him that if he could not handle physical scenes, he should stick to comedy. This dismissive attitude infuriated Garner, who had served in the Korean War and had nothing to prove about toughness to anyone, especially not to another actor on a television set. From that point forward, Garner saw Bronson as a bully and a fraud who confused violence with strength. Their paths crossed occasionally at industry events, and the tension was always visible. Bronson's later career playing vigilantes and revenge-seeking killers in films like Death Wish only deepened Garner's contempt. Garner believed those films were irresponsible and glorified the exact kind of mindless violence that was wrong with society. He made his opinions known in interviews without naming Bronson directly, but again everyone knew who he meant. Bronson never responded publicly, but people close to him said he dismissed Garner as soft and too concerned with being liked. The philosophical difference between them was stark. Bronson thought strength meant never showing weakness or emotion or vulnerability. Garner thought real strength included all those things, and that Bronson's characters were cartoon cutouts, not real human beings. As Garner once observed, any actor can scowl and shoot people, but it takes real talent to make audiences care about a character beyond the violence. That comment was clearly directed at Bronson and his entire filmography. They avoided each other completely in their later years, and Garner never missed an opportunity to distinguish his approach to tough guy roles from what he called the Bronson school of grunting and shooting. Number 4. Jim Nabors. Inclusion of Jim Nabors on this list surprises many people because Nabors seemed like one of the most harmless and likable people in Hollywood. He was famous for playing the sweet, naive Gomer Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show and later on his own spin-off series. But James Garner's dislike for Nabors had nothing to do with his characters and everything to do with a personal betrayal that Garner never forgot or forgave. In the mid-1960s, both men were top television stars and were involved in various business ventures and celebrity events. They were not close friends, but moved in the same circles and had what Garner thought was a cordial professional relationship. The betrayal came during a business deal involving a racing team. Garner was passionate about auto racing and had invested significant money and time into a racing venture. Nabors had expressed interest in becoming involved, and Garner in good faith shared detailed financial information and business plans with him. Instead of joining Garner's venture, Nabors took that information and used it to get involved with a competing racing team. Garner felt completely betrayed and blindsided. He had trusted Nabors, and that trust had been used against him. When Garner confronted him about it, Nabors claimed it was just business and that there was nothing personal about his decision. That response made things worse because Garner believed that how you conduct business reveals your character, and Nabors had revealed himself to be dishonest and untrustworthy. From that moment forward, Garner refused to have anything to do with Nabors. He would not appear at events if Nabors was attending, and he made sure they never worked together in any capacity. Friends tried to reconcile them over the years, but Garner was absolutely firm in his position. He had been raised with a code that your word meant something, and that betraying someone's trust was unforgivable. Nabors had violated that code, and no amount of time or success could change what he had done. The famous quote often attributed to Maya Angelou applies here: when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Nabors had shown Garner who he was, and Garner believed it and never forgot it. What made this hatred particularly painful for Garner was that it involved disappointment. He had not expected much from people like Heston or McQueen or Bronson, so their behavior was unsurprising. But he had thought better of Nabors, and being wrong about someone's character bothered him deeply. In his later interviews, when asked about professional regrets, Garner mentioned that he regretted trusting the wrong people, and while he did not name Nabors specifically, those close to him knew exactly who he meant. Number 5. Ephraim Zimbalist. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. was the epitome of the polished professional television actor, with his long-running success on shows like 77 Sunset Strip and the FBI. On the surface, he seemed like exactly the kind of performer James Garner would respect. But their relationship was poisoned by conflicts within the Screen Actors Guild and competing visions for what the union should be fighting for. During the 1960s and 1970s, Garner was one of the most active and vocal members of SAG, fighting constantly for better residuals and improved working conditions and health benefits for actors. He believed the union should be aggressive in protecting actors, especially television actors who were being exploited by studios and networks. Zimbalist represented a more conservative faction within SAG that believed actors should be grateful for their success and should not rock the boat with aggressive demands. He advocated for cooperation with studios rather than confrontation. To Garner, this position was not just wrong, it was a betrayal of what unions were supposed to represent. The conflict came to a head during a particularly contentious SAG election where Garner supported candidates who wanted to fight for better contracts, and Zimbalist supported candidates who promised more moderate approaches. The campaign got ugly, with both sides accusing the other of not representing actors' real interests. Garner's side won, but the victory did not heal the wounds. Garner believed that Zimbalist and people like him were essentially working for the studios instead of for their fellow actors. He saw them as sellouts who had gotten theirs and did not care about the struggling performers who needed union protection the most. Zimbalist viewed Garner as a troublemaker whose aggressive tactics damaged relationships with the very people who employed actors. Their mutual contempt played out in industry meetings and interviews for years. Garner would make pointed comments about actors who forgot where they came from and who protected their own interests while pretending to care about others. Zimbalist would talk about the importance of professionalism and not biting the hand that feeds you. Everyone knew they were talking about each other. The philosophical divide between them was unbridgeable. Garner had grown up poor and had clawed his way to success and believed in fighting for the little guy. Zimbalist came from privilege and believed in maintaining the system that had treated him well. As Garner once said, some people succeed and then pull the ladder up behind them so nobody else can climb, and that kind of selfishness disgusted him. He was clearly talking about people like Zimbalist. They maintained icy civility when forced to interact at industry events, but the hatred was obvious to anyone paying attention. Even decades later, when both men's careers were long past their peaks, Garner never softened his opinion of Zimbalist and what he represented. Number 6. Clint Eastwood's rivalry between James Garner and Clint. Eastwood is perhaps the most famous on this list because both were such huge stars and because they represented competing visions of American masculinity on screen. Eastwood built his career on playing violent, laconic characters who solved problems with guns and rarely showed emotion. First as the man with no name in Sergio Leone's westerns, and later as Dirty Harry, Eastwood became an icon of a particular kind of tough guy conservatism. Garner played tough characters too, but always with more humor and vulnerability and emotional intelligence. The conflict between them was both professional and political. Garner believed that Eastwood's films glorified violence and presented a simplistic worldview where complex problems could be solved by shooting the right people. He found this philosophy juvenile and dangerous, especially as Eastwood's films became more popular and influential. Eastwood dismissed Garner's type of performance, soft and sentimental, and not authentically masculine. He represented a harder-edged approach to action films that was becoming dominant in the 1970s and 1980s. Their competing careers highlighted the tension in American culture between different versions of what a hero should be. They never worked together despite both being major Western stars and major action stars for decades. This was not accidental. Both men made it clear they had no interest in collaborating. The few times they were at the same events, they avoided each other or exchanged the bare minimum of pleasantries required by politeness. Garner particularly resented that Eastwood transitioned into directing and used that power to keep making the same kind of films with the same kind of messages. He saw Eastwood as someone who had never grown or evolved as an artist and who kept repeating the same violent fantasies over and over. Eastwood viewed Garner as yesterday's news and representative of a softer, less interesting era in Hollywood. The political dimension of their conflict became more pronounced as Eastwood became increasingly vocal about his conservative views and even entered politics. Garner, who held more liberal positions, found Eastwood's politics as simplistic as his films. As Garner noted in interviews, some people play tough guys so long they start to believe their own press and forget that acting is pretending, not reality. Eastwood never responded to Garner's criticisms directly, but his continued success making exactly the kind of films Garner criticized was its own kind of response. The great irony is that both men aged into playing more complex characters later in their careers, with Eastwood in particular gaining critical praise for more nuanced work in films like Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby, but by then the damage to their relationship was permanent. They represented different eras and different philosophies and different ideas about what movies should be and what men should be. Neither was willing to concede that the other might have a valid point. The hatred remained mutual and unresolved until Garner's death.